unfortunately means romance scams are on the rise.
Yeah, this morning we're on your side warning you about a popular new text scam.
We've reached a point that scams are so sophisticated that an individual customer cannot protect themselves against a scam.
A retired teacher in Ohio got a WhatsApp message from a stranger in the autumn of 2021. The message said, "Sorry, wrong number." She replied anyway. The stranger was warm, interesting, well-traveled. He said he was a businessman based in Singapore. They talked for weeks about food, about family, about life. He never asked for anything. He just kept showing up. By spring of 2022, she had moved her entire $400,000 pension fund.
Looking for love, a woman who recently moved to Boston turned to dating apps, and she must have been over the moon when she connected with a handsome, charming, and successful man who spoke French even.
Into a cryptocurrency investment platform he recommended. The returns looked extraordinary. Her balance on the platform showed over $600,000 within weeks. Then she tried to withdraw. She was told she owed a 30% tax before any withdrawal could be processed. She paid it. Then another fee appeared, then another. Each time she paid, a new reason emerged why she could not access her money. By the time she understood what had happened, the platform was gone, the man was gone, and so was every dollar she had saved over 40 years of teaching. She was not naive, she was not elderly and confused. She was 61 years old, college educated, financially literate, and had successfully raised 3 children on a teacher's salary. None of it mattered. What happened to her is called pig butchering, and it is the fastest growing financial fraud in the world.
It is. They're called romance scams, and the FBI says, like a lot of these scams, it's on the rise right now.
The FBI reported that romance and investment scam losses in the United States alone exceeded $3.5 billion in 2023. Globally, researchers estimate that pig butchering networks have stolen over $75 billion since the operation scaled in 2019. That figure comes from analysis by researchers at the University of Texas at Austin published in 2023, cross-referencing blockchain transaction data with known scam infrastructure. $75 billion, more than the GDP of many countries. Almost zero prosecutions. This is the full investigation. Chapter 1. What pig butchering actually is. The name comes from the Chinese term shazhu pan, which translates roughly to pig butchering plate. The reference is deliberate and clinical. In this fraud operation, the victim is the pig. The weeks or months of relationship building is the fattening, and the financial extraction at the end is the slaughter. Pig butchering is not a romance scam in the traditional sense. Traditional romance scams ask for money directly, a crisis, a medical bill, a travel emergency. The victim sends cash. The operation moves on. Pig butchering is different in 2 critical ways. First, it never asks for money directly. It creates the conditions under which the victim moves their own money into what appears to be an investment opportunity. The victim is not tricked into handing over their savings. They are convinced they are investing them. Second, it is not opportunistic. It is industrialized. The operation runs at scale, with hundreds or thousands of simultaneous victim relationships managed by teams of operators following scripts, supervised by shift managers, operating out of physical facilities with production targets. The structure has 3 phases. Phase 1 is contact and cultivation. A message arrives on WhatsApp, Telegram, Instagram, or a dating app. It is warm, specific, and not a mass blast. It targets the individual. If the target responds, a relationship begins. The cultivator, the person managing the conversation, is operating from a playbook. They are trained to build emotional connection, systematically. They will never meet in person. They often work in shifts, handing conversations between team members to maintain consistency. Phase 2 is the investment introduction. At some point, often weeks into the relationship, the cultivator mentions, casually, that they have been doing well with a particular investment platform. They share their returns. They offer to show the target how it works. The platform looks professional. It shows real-time prices, charts, withdrawal functionality. It is entirely fake. Phase 3 is the extraction and exit. The target puts in money. The fake platform shows impressive returns. The target puts in more. They may tell family members about their new investment opportunity. Then comes the withdrawal request, and the fees, the taxes, the frozen account, the disappeared platform. Everything is gone. The sophistication of this operation is not incidental. It is the product of deliberate industrial design. Chapter 2. The criminal networks, Cambodia, Myanmar, and the compound system.
Love at first swipe cost one Philadelphia woman almost $500,000.
To understand pig butchering at scale, you have to understand where it is physically operated from. And the answer is more disturbing than most people expect from a financial fraud. The pig butchering industry is centered in South and Southeast Asia, primarily in special economic zones and border regions in Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, and the Philippines. These areas have in common a combination of characteristics: weak regulatory oversight, proximity to border areas where national law enforcement jurisdiction is ambiguous, and, in some cases, the active involvement or passive tolerance of local officials. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime published a report in October 2023, estimating that more than 100,000 people are held in scam compounds across Southeast Asia at any given time. These are not willing employees. A significant proportion were trafficked into the facilities under false pretenses, recruited with promises of legitimate jobs in data entry, customer service, or marketing, and then held, had their passports confiscated, and forced to operate fraud operations under threat of violence or punishment. This is where the pig butchering story becomes a human rights crisis as much as a financial crime. The people managing the WhatsApp conversations, cultivating the relationships, running the fraud scripts, a meaningful portion of them are themselves victims. They are enslaved workers in compounds in Sihanoukville, in Cambodia, in the Mayawadi and Shwe Koko areas of Myanmar, in areas of Thailand along the border. They run scam operations because the alternative is a beating. Al Jazeera, Vice, The Wall Street Journal, and multiple United Nations investigators have documented specific compounds, including satellite imagery, showing the construction of large-scale facilities designed specifically for this purpose. Survivors who have escaped or been rescued have described conditions including physical punishment for failing to meet daily revenue targets, forced labor lasting 14 to 16 hours per day, and the psychological cost of being forced to defraud and emotionally manipulate strangers. The criminal organizations that run these compounds are sophisticated enough that they have effectively industrialized forced labor into a financial fraud assembly line. Some of the facilities are run by networks with connections to organized crime groups that previously operated in drug trafficking, human trafficking, and gambling operations. The infrastructure, logistics, and capital required to build and sustain these operations is significant and points to organized criminal structures with considerable resources. Cambodia has faced significant international pressure to address compound operations on its territory. Following diplomatic pressure from the United States, the European Union, and China, whose nationals have been victims in large numbers, Cambodian authorities conducted raids on several identified compound locations in 2022 and 2023. The operations disrupted some facilities. New ones opened elsewhere. Chapter 3: The Technology That Made It Scale.
A warning from the FBI and State Attorney General Steve Marshall. This is the time of year for romance scams.
The pig butchering scam is not new. Variants of the investment fraud component existed in China from roughly 2016 onward. What changed between 2019 and 2023 was the technology stack available to run it, which made the operation scalable in ways that were previously impossible. Artificial intelligence has played a specific and significant role. AI-generated profile photos, produced by generative adversarial networks, create synthetic faces that do not correspond to any real person. These faces are used on the fake romantic profiles that initiate contact. They are high quality enough to pass casual visual inspection and not return results on reverse image searches, which previously allowed people to identify stolen photos from real individuals. AI translation tools allow operators who do not speak the target's language to run convincing conversations in English, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, or any other language in real time. The grammatical quality of the messages is high enough that the slight awkwardness, which might indicate a non-native speaker, is indistinguishable from the natural awkwardness of someone writing in a second language. AI voice synthesis has been deployed in more sophisticated versions of the operation. Where victims have requested phone or video calls, some operations have used real-time voice modulation and, in some documented cases, deepfake video technology to maintain the persona through an audio or video conversation. FBI warnings issued in 2023 specifically flagged the use of AI-generated video in romance fraud as an emerging threat. The cryptocurrency infrastructure is the other critical technology component. Crypto is the extraction mechanism for 3 reasons. Transactions are difficult to reverse. The transaction trail, while technically visible on the blockchain, is practically difficult to follow across multiple wallet hops and chain swaps. And the regulatory framework for crypto assets in most jurisdictions lags significantly behind the speed at which criminal networks can move funds. The fake investment platforms, the Shaju Pan apps, are technically sophisticated. They show real-time price data sourced from actual crypto markets. They have functioning chart tools and portfolio displays. The withdrawal mechanism works on small test amounts that the victim may be encouraged to make to build confidence. The fraud is in the larger withdrawal, the one that is refused until the victim has paid fabricated fees that ultimately leave them with nothing. Blockchain analytics firm. Chainalysis published research in 2023 identifying pig butchering as the fastest growing form of crypto crime by transaction volume, and estimated that crypto-based pig butchering operations extracted approximately $2.57 billion in crypto assets in 2022 alone through identifiable scam addresses. This is a floor estimate. It counts only transactions linked to identified scam infrastructure, not the full operation. Chapter 4. Why intelligent people cannot see it coming.
Valley woman thought that she was falling in love.
Instead, her retirement savings was taken.
The most common response to pig butchering stories is, how does someone fall for this? The question itself is part of the problem. It assumes the victimization reflects a failure of intelligence or judgment that would not apply to the person asking. It does not. The pig butchering operation is engineered by people who have studied human psychology, relationship formation, and emotional vulnerability with the same rigor that legitimate companies study consumer behavior. The playbooks used in these operations, copies of which have been recovered and translated by investigative journalists and researchers, are sophisticated documents. They specify how to identify and respond to different emotional states. They provide scripts for building trust across different cultural contexts. They anticipate and address the specific objections that arise at each phase of the relationship. The psychological mechanism is not naive trust. It is something called task commitment. Once a person has invested time, emotional energy, and some initial money into a relationship and an investment, the psychological cost of accepting that the entire thing is false is enormous. Victims have described knowing something was wrong, feeling a creeping doubt, while simultaneously being unable to act on that doubt, because the emotional investment in the relationship made the alternative reality too painful to accept. This is not stupidity. This is how human cognition works under conditions of emotional investment. The sunk cost effect that keeps people paying for subscriptions they do not use keeps people contributing to investment platforms run by people who do not exist. The demographic profile of pig butchering victims further challenges the naive assumption. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center data for 2023 shows that the highest individual losses in romance and investment fraud come from victims aged 30 to 60, not from the elderly population often assumed to be most vulnerable to financial fraud. Professionals, business owners, and financially sophisticated individuals are represented at high rates, partly because they have more money to steal, and partly because the cultivators targeting them adjust their approach accordingly. A 2022 paper published in Criminology and Criminal Justice analyzed the psychological profile of pig butchering victims and found that the qualities that made individuals most vulnerable were not deficits, but strengths: high openness to new experiences, strong empathy, and a tendency to give others the benefit of the doubt. The scam specifically targets people with these qualities because they produce the extended engagement that the fraud requires. Chapter 5: The Crypto Investment Trap. Step by step. The mechanics of the crypto scam component are specific enough to be worth walking through in detail, because understanding exactly how it works is the most effective protection against it. After weeks of relationship building, the cultivator mentions their investment platform. They call it by a name. Sometimes it resembles a legitimate exchange like Binance or Coinbase, with slight variations. Sometimes it is a made-up name with a professional web presence. The cultivator shares screenshots of their own returns. They offer to walk the target through the process. The target is directed to download an app or access a web platform. On legitimate exchanges, the platform is hosted on regulated infrastructure with verifiable identities. On pig butchering platforms, the domain was registered recently. The company registration, if listed, points to shell entities, and the customer service contact points to the same operator network running the fraud. None of this is obvious to someone who has not specifically investigated it. The target deposits a small amount, often a few $100s. The platform shows it invested, with returns beginning immediately. The cultivator encourages a slightly larger deposit. The returns continue to look impressive. The target is invited to invest in a specific high-yield opportunity that the cultivator claims to have access to. The investment figure grows. On the platform, the fake balance can show hundreds of thousands of dollars. When the target first attempts a withdrawal, a small amount often goes through. This is the operation's method of building further confidence. When the target tries to withdraw a significant amount, they are told they owe a tax or fee first. The fee is typically presented as a compliance requirement: a VIP tier fee, a capital gains withholding, an international transfer surcharge. The fee is real. The withdrawal will never happen. Some operations extend the extraction by keeping the victim in the fee payment cycle for weeks or months. Each payment of a fee reveals a new fee. The victim, having already paid significant amounts in fees on top of their original investment, faces the psychological reality that admitting the fraud means admitting all previous payments are also lost. Some victims liquidate retirement accounts, take out home equity loans, borrow from family members, not because they are irrational, but because the information they have been given, while false, is internally coherent, and the emotional relationship backing it feels real. The Bitcoin scam platform vanishes when the operator decides the target is exhausted. The cultivator stops responding. The website goes offline. The phone numbers disconnect. In some cases, a recovery scam appears, a new contact claiming to be a fraud recovery service that can help the victim get their money back. This is the same criminal network running a second extraction on an already defrauded victim. Chapter 6, $75 billion and almost no prosecutions. The asymmetry between the scale of pig butchering fraud and the prosecution rate is one of the most striking features of the crime. The $75 billion figure represents an estimate of total global proceeds across identified pig butchering operations from 2019 through 2023, derived from blockchain analysis, law enforcement data, and academic research. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, which tracks complaints submitted by U.S. victims alone, reported that investment fraud losses, of which pig butchering is the dominant category, reached $4.57 billion in 2023, a 38% increase from 2022. These figures represent only reported losses. Law enforcement and researchers consistently note that actual losses are substantially higher because victim shame, distrust of law enforcement, and in some cases immigration status discourage reporting. The prosecution rate is near zero, not because investigators do not know who is responsible, but because the criminal infrastructure is physically located in jurisdictions where international cooperation is limited, where local officials may have relationships with compound operators, and where the evidence required to build a prosecutable case is difficult to obtain through standard mutual legal assistance treaty processes. Interpol has designated pig butchering networks as a priority organized crime target. The U.S. Department of Justice has prosecuted some participants in money laundering networks connected to pig butchering operations, primarily people within the United States who converted crypto proceeds into cash. These prosecutions address the financial infrastructure, not the operators. The compound operators, the criminal network organizers, and the people who built the fake platforms remain largely outside the reach of Western law enforcement. Blockchain forensics firms, including Chainalysis and Elliptic, have made significant contributions to mapping the financial infrastructure of these operations. Their analyses have identified specific wallet clusters associated with known pig butchering networks, allowing law enforcement to flag incoming transactions from these addresses. But the criminal networks have responded by increasing the sophistication of their money laundering operations, using mixers, chain swaps between different cryptocurrencies, and layering through multiple wallet hops before converting to fiat currency. The cryptocurrency industry's response has been mixed. Some exchanges have implemented enhanced due diligence on suspicious transaction patterns consistent with pig butchering activity. Others have been slower to act, and some offshore exchanges with minimal KYC requirements remain significant conduits for extracted funds. The UN report on Southeast Asian scam compounds called for cryptocurrency exchanges to implement stronger monitoring and for governments to establish greater regulatory accountability for platforms that process proceeds of this nature. Chapter 7. The human cost. The workers inside the compounds. The full accounting of pig butchering requires confronting a dimension that transforms it from a financial crime story into something more disturbing. The people running the WhatsApp conversations, working the fraud scripts, managing the fake investment platforms, thousands of them are themselves victims. The UN estimates that more than 200,000 people have been trafficked into scam operations across Southeast Asia, based on their October 2023 report, which revised upward the earlier 100,000 figure. Recruitment typically occurs through social media job advertisements promising legitimate positions in data entry, customer service, and digital marketing, with attractive salaries in Thailand, Cambodia, or Myanmar. Recruits pay brokers to secure the positions. When they arrive, their passports are taken. They are told they must work off recruitment fees. The work is fraud. Survivors who have escaped and spoken to journalists describe compound conditions that vary significantly depending on the operator. Some operations reportedly pay workers who meet their targets and allow limited movement. Others describe physical violence for underperformance, punishment cells, trafficking between compounds when workers are sold to different operators, and the use of electrocution devices as discipline tools. Testimonies collected by the International Justice Mission, a non-profit that works with law enforcement on human trafficking cases, describe psychological coercion, violence, and documented cases of torture. This is why some victims of pig butchering, on learning that the person they corresponded with for months was themselves a trafficking victim, experience an additional layer of psychological complexity. The cultivator who spent 6 months building an emotional relationship with them was not a willing fraudster. They were a person trapped in a compound who faced violence if they did not perform. The human trafficking dimension has accelerated international attention. China, which has faced significant political pressure because Chinese nationals constitute both a major victim group of pig butchering fraud and a major trafficked worker group in the compounds, applied direct diplomatic pressure to Myanmar military leadership and to the Thai government in 2023 and 2024. Chinese authorities conducted operations along the Myanmar border to interrupt trafficking routes. The pressure produced some compound closures and forced relocations, but the criminal networks are adaptive and have moved operations to less scrutinized locations. The pig butchering scam is simultaneously a financial crime affecting millions of victims globally, a forced labor and trafficking operation enslaving hundreds of thousands of workers, and an organized crime enterprise generating revenues comparable to major multinational corporations. Its full scope is only recently being understood by the institutions that would need to address it. Chapter 8. Why this is likely to get worse before it gets better. The trajectory of pig butchering operations through 2024 and beyond is concerning rather than reassuring. The AI technology that makes the operation more convincing is improving faster than the regulatory and consumer awareness frameworks that might counter it. Real-time deepfake video calls are already documented in some pig butchering operations. As the quality of AI-generated personas improves and the cost of using this technology falls, the distinction between a fake profile and a real person will become effectively impossible to determine through normal interaction. The criminal networks operating the compounds have demonstrated significant operational resilience. When Cambodian authorities cracked down on Sihanoukville operations in 2022 and 2023, compound operations relocated to Myanmar. When international pressure increased on Myanmar operations, networks established new facilities in Laos, the Philippines, and other locations with weaker enforcement environments. The infrastructure is mobile, and the capital to rebuild it is abundant. The cryptocurrency ecosystem continues to present challenges for asset recovery. When a victim loses money to pig butchering, the practical probability of recovering that money through any legal or regulatory process is extremely low. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center estimates that less than 5% of crypto fraud losses are ever recovered. Blockchain transactions are irreversible by design. Civil litigation against entities in foreign jurisdictions is expensive, slow, and usually futile. Law enforcement agencies, including Europol, Interpol, and the FBI, have increased cooperation and have begun publishing joint advisories and conducting coordinated operations. In 2023, Interpol's Operation Stormmakers 2 resulted in arrests across multiple countries of individuals connected to human trafficking networks that fed compound operations. These operations are meaningful. They are not yet proportionate to the scale of the problem. Consumer awareness is the most scalable protection available right now. The FBI and FTC have both published guidance on recognizing pig butchering approaches. Multiple countries have added investment fraud warnings to their national consumer protection frameworks. But awareness campaigns reach people who are already looking for them. They do not reach the retired teacher on a Tuesday afternoon when she gets a warm, wrong number message on WhatsApp. Chapter 9. The Hidden System. What pig butchering reveals about global crime. Step back from the individual victim stories and the compound footage and the blockchain statistics, and a larger pattern becomes visible. Pig butchering is the product of a specific convergence. Ungoverned spaces where criminal organizations can operate without meaningful interference. A global financial technology that enables anonymous cross-border value transfer, communication platforms that connect people across continents at zero cost, and artificial intelligence that removes the human skill requirements that previously limited the scale of social engineering fraud. None of these elements are going away. They are all becoming more accessible, less expensive, and more capable. The criminal networks that have built the pig butchering industry are adaptive institutions that have repeatedly demonstrated the ability to move, rebuild, and innovate faster than the regulatory and law enforcement frameworks designed to contain them. What pig butchering also reveals is the cost of the accountability gaps in the global financial system. The proceeds of these operations are moving through cryptocurrency exchanges, money service businesses, and traditional banking systems. Each link in the laundering chain involves an institution that could implement controls. Many have not because the compliance cost is real, and the regulatory pressure has been insufficient. The victims of pig butchering are distributed across every country with internet access and smartphone penetration. The $75 billion extracted from them is concentrated in criminal organizations that are beginning to rival, in financial scale, some of the legitimate corporations whose legal systems and financial infrastructure they exploit. This is not a niche financial crime. It is one of the largest ongoing wealth transfers in the world. It is happening right now to people who are educated, careful, and completely unprepared for an operation that has been specifically engineered to defeat their defenses. Call to action. Here is the checklist I want you to keep. 5 signs that a relationship or investment opportunity is a pig butchering operation. 1. The contact was initiated by a stranger through WhatsApp, Telegram, or a dating app with a message that appeared to be a wrong number, a random greeting, or an unusually warm opening from someone you did not know. 2. The person cannot meet in person and always has a plausible reason. They are abroad. They are traveling for work. There is a timing complication that keeps getting extended. 3. They mention their investment returns unprompted, usually after several weeks of relationship building, and the returns sound exceptional. 4. They encourage you to use a specific platform they recommend, rather than a well-known regulated exchange. 5. When you try to withdraw, a fee or tax appears that must be paid before the withdrawal can be processed. If any of these apply to a situation you or someone you know is in right now, stop. Do not pay any fee. Do not send any additional money. Contact the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov if you are in the United States. The Global Anti-Scam Organization at globalantiscam.org specifically tracks pig butchering operations and has resources for victims in multiple languages. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you know someone who has been targeted by a romance scam or a crypto fraud operation? Have you personally received the wrong number message that this operation starts with? Drop it in the comments. These stories matter because they are the distributed early warning system that regulatory and law enforcement infrastructure cannot build alone. And the bigger question, should cryptocurrency exchanges be legally required to implement anti-pig butchering monitoring and block transactions to identified scam infrastructure? Or does that level of blockchain surveillance create its own civil liberties problems? The comments section on this one is going to be interesting. If this investigation, the criminal networks, the financial systems they exploit, the legal gaps that let them operate, is the kind of content you want more of, subscribe. This channel covers the systems hiding inside the financial world, and pig butchering is the most consequential one operating right now.
$75 billion stolen through fake love. The most dangerous financial crime in the world, and most people have never heard of it until now.